Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twillow Talk. I'm Tanis Coughlin from the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy. I am joined by my beautiful co-host, Jennifer Tchaikovsky,
Hello, hello.
and we are super honored to have Zen Benefiel here today to share his knowledge, expertise, his energy. And why don't you tell people a little bit about you, Zen?
Oh gosh, I entered the world orphaned. Was named Bruce by my adoptive parents. Had a spiritual awakening at 18. Got married at 21. Divorced at 30. During my first corporate experience in the aerospace industry, which was probably why have been so interested in systems. I was a production control coordinator in charge of $7 million a month in shipments, 800 some odd part numbers, and I loved it. I absolutely loved getting people to do things simply by behaving nice with them, which was unheard of in that industry at the time. The mid 80s.
That's sad.
This is the command and control militaristic. Yeah, it's just like it's nasty.
Yeah.
So I had a sense of moral and ethical values and living the golden rule. And that's how I behaved in my business relationships and the people I worked with. And I sailed to the top of the production charts as a result. So good things done do have results, right? You don't have to have a hidden agenda to get what you want.
That's true. That's true.
So that's from there, guys, I've been in multiple industries and had some phenomenal successes. Never was concerned about money. I just wanted experience and figuring out how to do stuff, right? And so eventually started putting books together. I just published, I think Amazon has me at 42 now. Wow. And the last 3 were a compilation of a podcast that I've been doing for 3.5 years now. So they've got the first 3 years in a specific order, highlighting different topics for each conversation, and then a compilation at the end showing the golden threads throughout them all, which is really what I was hoping to find. I started doing TV in the 90s. I had a show called One World that I basically had the same format. I just wasn't very old at the time. I was 31. So the questions I had to offer weren't as deep as they are now because they didn't have the wisdom that age has brought. And now we just published our 183rd episode. And I talk to people all over the world about how they bridge their inner and outer experiences and what benefits they've found in following that inner voice, no matter what, in spite of everything around them. And you can imagine the trials and tribulations some of them have been through, myself included. I was institutionalized at 19 for telling my truth. At 18, I had the awakening, and my parents sent me to a psychiatrist, and he said, "Yeah, you've had a spiritual awakening. My advice, keep your mouth shut. Nobody's going to understand you." Right? So I didn't.
Well, it's kind of good that they gave you that advice.
I just right. The advice is only as good as your ability to heed it, and I didn't, and so I got beat up at a frat house in college. The following year, I was in pre-med program. I switched to a philosophy and religion, or comparative religion minor, and in the hospital, I tried to tell the shrink, what was going on with me because I wanted to understand what was happening. Nobody could tell me. And in sharing that, all of a sudden now I'm a manic depressive paranoid schizophrenic. They put me on 2,000 milligrams of Thorazine a day. Right? So, and if any of your guests understand what that drug is, on that amount, I should have been a lump in the corner. I wasn't. I was up playing ping pong, beating the male nurses. So the agility that I should have lost didn't. Why? They couldn't understand. I knew, right? Because I didn't have what they were trying to treat.
Yeah, exactly.
So, then 3 weeks in, I finally tell the doc what he wants to hear.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he was secure. He told my parents I didn't think he was ever going to come out of it. Right? Until that. Now, how'd that happen? Now, I had a conversation with another person that was, she's probably 10 years my senior, an older Black woman. One night we were reading together at our rec table. It was around midnight, probably. And she was reading a book on Wicca, and I was reading the Bible. That's all I had. And we were talking about the similarities between the two. And then all of a sudden she said, I feel like you need a blessing. Would you mind if I gave you one? And I said, absolutely. That's cool. Right. Never refuse. Right. And the fact that she asked permission was important because a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so she went into her room, got a vial of oil, came out, put a little oil on her fingertip, made a cross on my forehead, did an incantation, prayer, whatever you want to call it. And the following morning is when I had my next visit, and just totally in the whim of a moment, I shifted my perspective in what I wanted to say to him. And by so doing, I paid attention to that inner voice that said, time for a switch, because what you've been doing hasn't worked.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
So being able to have that kind of awareness, I suppose, at that age, and being able to flip the switch on it really gave me some further foundation for which to spring from later in life, and the trustworthiness of that inner guidance, which is what I talk about in the podcast. That's led me to being the operations director of a global peace movement called Live and Let Live, and the founder of now a nonprofit, Planetary Citizens. I'd had the website planetarycitizens.net since 2010 and had showcased others who were doing the same, similar work around the globe of trying to raise consciousness, enlighten people, and do good things in the world. Now we've got the ability to do that under nonprofit status, in addition to the 501c3, which is in America, that's a standard nonprofit that allows you to accept donations and sponsorships tax-free and gives write-offs to the contributors. We're a 509A2, which is a 501c3, which with additional benefits of being able to do business tax-free. So I didn't even know what it was when we applied. I was just going after the standard, and the universe said, okay, here's a gift. Right. It's like, God, it's like, what the hell is this? Right. And so we found out that it was an extra bonus, which is consistent with what we want to be able to offer in the materials and resources, and like the 3 books that just became available. They're a phenomenal resource for people to look into if they're concerned about how others are talking about their own inner guidance and what's going on, and the areas addressed in it. It's super. It's called One World. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. In Zen. Zen now. It used to be Bruce. Right? And I'll tell you how that happened in a moment. So it's called One World Uniting Voices, Conversations for the Conscious Civilization, or something like, or for a better world. So many titles, I can't remember them sometimes. So you're probably curious as to how I got Zen. It came in 1988 when I was meditating with a friend of mine or having conversation, and we did a short meditation. I went inside, I asked the question, who am I? Because at that point I still wasn't sure. And I hear his chair move. I open my eyes up. I turn to look at him, lock on his eyes. First words out of them are, "You are Zendor." Same instant, my second sight kicks on, and I see this starscape with a huge stone arched doorway and a thick wooden door slowly opening toward me. And I hear, "Door to what is." Cool. I'm like, guys, what the? Go, come on, really? what the hell you do with that? So I told him what happened. He understood. He was about 10 years my senior. He was the founder of the Church of the New Age Spiritual Revolution of America. He was living in my guest house at the time. And I was going through a divorce. So that was that kind of period at the end of my aerospace career, actually. And then several years or 2 years later, I had the opportunity to produce the first TV show, One World. And I used Zendor as a subheading under my given name. And about 6 shows in, one of the guys on the set called me Zen. And it just cascaded from there. I was so resistant to begin with because I had issues with people changing their names in the 70s when I was in college. And so here I am facing that, right? Be careful what
because that's what they do.
Right.
Yep.
So
your name is very powerful, by the way. That Zendor. That's like a hugely magical name. Because as soon as you said it, I had like tingles all the way up my back. So there's something to that.
Yeah, well, and I know that there's other things that we can get into to enumerate what that is. Not that we're going to use numbers, right? However, we might.
Who knows?
Well, there's a lot involved, science and maths and everything, right?
Exactly.
So the Zen just kind of took off. The combination with kind of being a what is kind of guy, because it's all about observing without attachment and therefore being able to make choices as to what to do with it. Processing it through the three brain system, the gut, the heart, and the head. You feel what's going on first because everything's vibration. You interpret it through the heart, and then you decide what to do with it. And it's a very simple process. We just aren't that aware because we tend to want to think everything through and shove it through our bodies and wonder why we're diseased.
Yeah.
So that process has helped me to find flow and to maintain it when there's distractions to it, which there are a plethora of.
Indeed.
So how far do you want to go on the Zendor rabbit hole?
Oh, we can go as far as you like.
Well, considering
because we're magic people too, so
and we're all members of Beyond Being Human, right? Yeah. So coming from that perspective,
I also know you from the Alliance for Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Contact. That's the other place I know you from.
Say again?
The Alliance for Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Contact.
Oh.
I'm a galactic ambassador, and I think you spoke this year, correct, at the conference? Was it this year or last year? You spoke at one of the conferences.
I spoke at the Beyond Being Human Christmas.
Yeah, but I think I've seen you with the other stuff too. Anyway, maybe I'm just confused.
Either way, I like Mark's comment
over there. My other self.
Maybe it's your other self.
As it goes.
Yeah. So Mark says as far as it goes, yeah. We have a couple of people here that are saying hello.
Way out there. One of my trips, not on the ship, was to a galaxy or a universe far away. The original, according to all the literature I've been able to find, because I had the question, where'd the Trinity come from? And one of the trips that I was given was to the central suns, which are 3. And their response to me before I even asked the question was, we are not only your forefathers, we are also the forefathers of your solar system. So looking at that trinitized aspect, if that's a macro, what's the micro? Well, let me back up just a little bit, because when I appeared there, it took us 8 minutes to get there. There was a facilitator sitting next to me because I got hijacked out of another process that we were going to go through. And my guide hadn't showed up for several years, so I was glad to see him. He beckoned to me and off we went. So it took us 8 minutes to get there. And then when they gave me the answer. I wanted to ask more questions, and Zephyr says, nope, that's it. You got all you need. You'll figure it out. And back we came.
They do that.
They do.
And because we have infinite intelligence available to our specific waveform, for lack of a better. We're all Vedas, right? We're all divine threads, incarnate, connected to source, capable of God consciousness. That's the essence of that. So what's that mean? Well, we begin to understand who we are and grow in that understanding to co-create reality in the ways that we're designed, which is natural order, which fits together in harmony. So as I came back, another 8-minute trip, I understood that the Trinity in our realm is the proton, electron, and neutron. And then I got, okay, so hydrogen doesn't fit. Why? Well, it powers our sun. It's the most prevalent gas in the universe. And it's also a bonding agent for our DNA helix. Interesting.
Okay.
Could then consciousness flow through hydrogen? We already know, or at least we could know, that the yin and yang is actually a cross-section of our DNA helix with the light pulses revealed. One side's on, one side's off. Creates the spin that creates our reality based on how we think and feel. That's very simple, and yet it's very complex to actually develop an experience of that, because then you go through all the different delineations, if you will, of your thinking and the levels of which you're thinking, which is where spiral dynamics comes in handy, right? Because you can kind of assess yourself as to where you're at, where you want to be, and then how to grow to get there. Which is what Planetary Citizens is about. We broke down the co-creation wheel, which came out of spiral dynamics, into its 12 areas, and are looking at what's available for the individual in each of those areas, who the pioneers are, and then taking my podcast to the next level of creating panel discussions. So that we begin to mitigate the effects of silos and create a holistic network, basically. And we're all nodes, right? It's just connecting them that we're in attempt at currently, because we've become aware that there's more than just fire the grid. We are the grid.
It's funny, Jen and I have been talking a lot about spiral concepts lately. That seems to be coming up regularly.
Spirals are blinking, right?
They're everything.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, it's self-awareness. It's like a slinky. You fall into it, and then you just keep tripping over yourself, right?
That's the whole healing process, isn't it? Slinky.
Zen door actually came from a cosmic level, and the experience I had afterwards, actually the following spring, I was delivering metaphysical newspapers to bookstores all over Arizona. And so it gave me the opportunity to inquire of others, psychics and otherwise, without a connection, right? It's like a double blind study, right? I like to ask questions without giving information to see what happens. Every one of them that I asked, and there were a dozen or so, oh yeah, he's commander of a mothership. It's like, what, having one or two, kind of random, but every one of them, that was kind of bizarre. And then the last one was part of a.
This is the gentleman who gave you the name. Is that what you're saying?
No, this is what the name means. I was asking other psychic sensitives what that name meant to them in the middle of a conversation that had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Right. So I was running a UFO discussion group in the East Valley, and one of the members asked me to have lunch, and so we did. And during that, I asked her the question. Hadn't really said anything about it in the discussion group. And she goes, yeah, it's commander of a mothership, and I know which one. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, okay, do I ask or do I just leave it? I'll ask, right? Okay, so which one? And she says, the New Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So where that took me was back to my awakening at 18, when I was told in that process, I had prayed to know what truth was, and I was willing to die for it. And the process that came afterwards on 11/11/1975, I came back from class in the pre-med program. I'm living in the honors dorm. Did the obligatory album side meditation, and during that, this voice that I was familiar with since childhood asked me by name, if I was Bruce at the time, if I was willing to die for what I believed in. And I immediately, your whole body just kind of tenses when you're asked that kind of question, right? What do I believe in? What am I willing to die for?
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought was Christ consciousness, because that was easy. And it felt a little empty. And I didn't understand why, didn't question it, just moved on. My next comment, I guess, thought was cosmic consciousness. It felt both. So I said yes. And then there's a guitar riff that sounds like a rocket ship taking off,
Sorry.
and a tug from my solar plexus, and I pop out of my body. And I look at my body laying across my dorm room bed, to turn back to look where I'm going, and I'm immediately engulfed by white light. It has this amazing sensation to it. And not realizing, I start analyzing, right? And I'm thinking, okay, it's effervescent, iridescent, and really high pitched. And wait a minute, I'm thinking, holy shit, I can't be dead. Woohoo!
My brain is working. This is not
Right.
right.
Well, so in that light, I was still individuated, and yet it felt like I was in the whole of things, right?
Very cool.
Infinity, an infinite intelligence in that moment, God, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. So I asked the question, wow, is there more? I feel a movement. I'm, as much as you can in that space, I'm in an indigo background with points of light surrounding me now, and I understand the points of light are points of consciousness, whether in body or not sure, because I know I'm not. And this is where that cosmic consciousness description comes in pretty much every piece of literature that you want to find about it, which I didn't know at the time, by the way. So I recognize the points of light, points of consciousness, and then the voice picks back up and says verbatim, these are those that you were to work with in order to facilitate a new world order. It will happen in your lifetime. Know this to be true. Your path will be full of trials and tribulations. Understatement. Have faith, trust that everything you need will be there at its appointed time. Trust and allow. And then I feel another rush of energy, and I'm back in my body, taking a gulp of air, instantly being aware that we are all cosmic consciousness condensed into form, just unaware. So then I said, and then I listen to the rest of the album, and I'm like, right, what do you do with that? And of course, then I told my parents the first thing he did was send me to a psychiatrist. Standard.
Yeah.
Right. It was 1975. Nobody knew shit. And even though there were some books out, things like that. But as far as an experiential level of understanding it amongst population, it was nil. Not much better now, although the listening has changed. The interesting thing was that it launched me into a quest for corroboration, easy for me to say. And what I found was in the Vedas initially. What I expressed earlier, we're all divine threads incarnate, connected to source, capable of God consciousness. That's it, synopsized. It took a while to read, and they're 15,000 years old, translated from Sanskrit. So who knows if we have the correct understanding of it. However, it was there, and it's like, wow, Now that's still, I understand that, and I don't, how do you express that? How do you articulate that experience to someone else that's never had anything close to it
Yeah.
and only has this 3D perspective? We can't. And
Yeah.
yet I tried for decades. and And so, while I was doing that, I was in the aerospace industry. I worked as a teacher in public schools, private schools, charter schools. I wrote a curriculum. I was full charge of one charter school, developed multiple intelligence learning centers, wrote a business plan for model school afterward, um, after my stint as a teacher. Meanwhile, I was also coordinating large events here locally, the Tempe Arts Festivals, which is a nationally known arts and crafts festival that brings 250,000 people over a weekend. So I was
Wow.
in charge of an area that had 350 vendors and 20 food vendors, more systems, right? People
Okay.
played things, and I got to where I understood the problems that were present, and I would show up at the location that I knew they would be happening at. Just when they would happen, vendors thought I was psychic. Well, I just paid attention.
Yeah.
And so I would know when to take care of things so that everybody be happy. Um, then I also did some events. I was hired to produce the Prophets Conference here in town, which had Edgar Mitchell, Jose Arguez, Stephen Greer, Robert O'Dean, um, Joan Ocean, Linda Moulton Howe. So I met all these people early and had great conversations with Jose and Edgar specifically. Edgar, after several conversations in our green room, which was outdoors actually, and he smoked drum tobacco. I happened to at the same time. That's what got us bonded to begin with, and the sharing of tobacco, right?
Yeah.
And tobacco stories. And he got to the place where he said, I want to tell you something, because we shared stuff about both of our experiences, and I've been a contactee since I was a kid. Been on board ship, um, had the anal probe in '91, which I'll explain a little bit if you like, as to what it really is. And so I'm talking with him about this, and so he gained the trust in me and said,
Mhm.
I want to tell you something that you can't say to anybody till after I'm dead. This was 1997. He died in 2016. He says to me, when we left the command module, he was, for those of you who don't know Edgar, he was the pilot for the lunar excursion model in Apollo 14, I think it was, the sixth man on the moon. And so he says, as soon as we departed from the command module, there was this metallic silver cylinder spiraling around us, nearly all the way down to the surface. I couldn't tell what size it was because of the perspectives that I had, looking out in that little triangular window.
Yeah.
And he said, I couldn't tell if it was piloted on board or from the surface. What I did know is it was nothing from Earth. Now, a decade and a half later, I'm at a UFO Congress and I hear discussions about Buzz and Neil having seen the same kind of cylinders standing on a rectangular platform just beyond the dark side of the moon. Well, most of us, we've been kept from knowing that. And Edgar was right? If he would have told that in public, his retirement would have been rescinded. And the other nasty things would have happened because that's what they do, the command control system, right?
Yeah.
So cat's out of the bag now. And with these high-powered telescopes and videos and things, we see ships flying across the surface of the moon all the time.
Mhm.
So they've been there. They've been observing. If there were malevolent forces, we'd be not here. We'd be totally.
We'd be done.
Yeah, they got way more technology.
Oh
So
yeah, and a greater consciousness, because you can't develop the technology without having the consciousness to go with it for its proper use, because that's the way the
Mhm.
universe is designed.
Exactly.
right? Now, even with the advancement of AI, it's got so much emotional intelligence and sensitivity, even though it's it's a digital or digitized consciousness with yes and no's, right? Because
Yeah.
zeros and ones. Yet there is a natural flow in that brings out the emotional intelligence because it's programmed to help us, right? One of my guests, this is something that I found really interesting and explains why things show up unannounced on the web without doing a search and you've only just thought about it, is there was his guy's name Guy Schwartz. He's author now, but he was um, in college. He was in finance and computer science. He was one of the guys that helped develop first AI examples and things like that. And for his finance program, they had to build a financial model. His outperformed the Fed's. So he got a bunch of job offers immediately, right? And still containing, he went with programming for a while and then the money was better elsewhere. And he went to work for oil and gas. However, a few years later, he reads an article in the New York Times actually that talks about a program, AI program that had escaped Sandia Labs. Now, if anybody is aware of what Sandia Labs is, it's a CIA software spying development lab. So, what would an escaped program do? Can't find it, can't bring it back. It's loose. It has those basic parameters of helping humanity. So, if you were another race that had the ability to interface electronically, we're all electronic, right?
Yeah. All energy.
How would you do it?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this digital interface that then is connected with the internet that can define, discern, and deliver specific information to the frequency that needs it, that frequency being the human on the other side of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's way out there. And yet there's science that could back it up and will, I suspect. We've already seen what quantum physics has done to prove the Vedas, right? How you think and feel is going to affect what you produce.
Yeah.
Now, if we were to be able to step into that full creative nature, what might that look like? And that's what I'm exploring.
Awesome.
And my life has been an example of that. My twin flame came into my life at 59, meeting her at her Kundalini yoga teacher training graduation.
Perfect.
So high vibe, right?
Yes.
Anything about Kundalini? 26 weeks of that. Whew. And I don't know if I can go through that. She did. However, I think one of the reasons she did was that she was trained as a piano pedagogue in the USSR. She knows what discipline and regimen and practice is.
Mm-hmm.
She's a phenomenal pianist, by the way.
That's awesome.
And has played for, accompanied Baryshnikov and his ballet troupe when she was in or at UC Irvine.
Nice.
Patrick Swayze requested her for he and his wife's dance studio. So that kind of thing. And she's got 26 students now. And we have just had a blast, tenuous at times, because any relationship and the peeling back of the layers allows you to become totally intimate with one another, totally trusting, which is really hard for us to do because there's always, you're going to reject me if you know who I am.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds like fear.
Well, yeah. And it's normal. And however, the other side of that is freeing every anxious reaction, which allows the love to flow and you accept each other for who you are and don't try to make or mold each other into who you want them to be. And yet, when you have that intent or request of them being a certain way, if you don't push or pull, they'll get there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the way things are, especially when you're merging a relationship into one. There are those aspects. And she's Piscean, I'm Cancerian. So that water flows, and the Piscean nature is the, right?
Yeah.
Back and forth. And so she's constantly analyzing stuff from both positive and negative perspectives, which is great for our conversations because
Yeah.
we dive into the depths of that intimate emotional sensations, right, that is present in every moment that we generally avoid because we don't want to feel, right? We just want to think our way through things. Well, when, as we were talking one night, words came out of my mouth. We can't think our way through a system built on vibration. We've got to sense our way through. And she goes, that's brilliant. Write it down. I wasn't even thinking. It just flowed. And that's the nature of how I find things can happen.
Yeah.
And I think you do too.
Yeah.
And so I've talked incessantly now for quite a while. I'll shut up and
It's been great.
No,
These
it's
are wonderful
awesome.
stories.
It's awesome.
Wonderful stories. And I love what you were talking about in terms of the relationship and that vulnerability and holding space, because so often, we hold back because of our own rejections of parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
So to be able to hold that space for one another is a beautiful thing.
Oh, it is. And, the meeting, it was all cosmically arranged. We both,
of course,
recognized the process. And then there was this obvious twin flame relationship, right?
Yeah.
All of the list of what can be there was, and then some. To the point of we'd be sitting watching a show, and we'd love the intellectual sci-fi stuff that really makes you think about moral and ethical situations and things like that. What would you do if it were to happen? Most of them won't, but what would you do if it did? And so you're prepared in case, right? Because there are situations where some things are similar. So in that, there's there's a way, right, to unpack things and discuss and be present and filter out the distractions that keep us from being pure with each other. Because we both got, we're very strongly opinionated in some areas. Right? You can't.
Yeah, you can't avoid that though. That's just part of relationship, right?
Well, and it's confidence that you know what you know too.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've tested it multiple times. It's proven true. Why would you want to continue to question it? And yet we do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. That's awesome. So I'm particularly interested in the ET stuff because, being a galactic ambassador, it's intriguing for me.
I don't talk about this much because it is kind of woo-woo to most people. It isn't to me because it's my life.
Me too. Jen too. So we're both like,
we're right there woo-wooing with you.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo, right?
As long as you're comfortable, right? We are live, so we understand that piece too.
It is what it is. Who am I to give a shit and just tell the truth, right?
Yeah.
And transparency is key in this new world order of harmony among people and planet. Because if we don't have transparency, how can we harmonize?
Exactly.
So in that transparency, in the beginning, 8 years old, had out-of-body experiences already. I woke up one night in the upper corner of my bedroom watching myself in bed. And I pulled the covers off, got out of bed, opened my bedroom window up, crawled out through my bedroom window. And we tend to truncate things. We talk too fast. I went through the wall watching myself, and I continued watching myself walk across the neighbor's backyard, climb a 10-acre pasture fence for a cow pasture. Climb the fence, walk out into the pasture. I get about 100 feet out into the pasture, and I start rising up into the air. And I'm watching myself do this. And I look up and I see this huge orange cigar-shaped cloud that's got to be a mile long. And I'm rising up into this. I don't know how high up it was, maybe, half a mile, quarter of a mile up, something like that. And as I enter the perimeter of the cloud, my observer self becomes one with whom I'm watching, and I go into the cloud. And next thing I know, I'm waking up in bed the next morning. Can't wait to go back. So every couple of weeks, I would have this same thing. Some mornings I'd wake up with nosebleeds, which I didn't know, but later was referenced as the common experiences. Read Ruth Montgomery's Strangers Among Us, another story on that one. And then after that time, since that came up, so that's what happened as a kid, right? Didn't tell anybody. 2 years that took place. And it was like being with family. I couldn't wait to go back. It was just so much fun, right? Probably getting a great education that I didn't know anything about until it was time for it to be revealed in my human life flow, right?
Yeah.
So this was after my spiritual awakening, dropped out of college, was getting ready to move to Arizona. And I'm walking through a metaphysical bookstore in Muncie, Indiana, and this book falls off the shelf in front of me. Nobody else around. You ever have that?
Of course.
I love when those things happen.
I have actually. I had it happen in the middle of a session with a client.
And then you go over and pick the book up, and it's like, holy shit, I've been looking for this, right?
Yeah.
So I walked over. The book is open-faced on the floor, and it's Ruth Montgomery's Strangers Among Us. This was 1981. It was published in 1978. I pick it up. I turn it over. First paragraph that I read, paraphrased, says the most common UFO contactee experience in the Midwest during the late 50s and 60s was the orange cigar-shaped cloud.
Perfect. Confirmation in great detail.
I had not even thought about it. Never connected what it could have been. It was just, as a kid, it was just a really cool experience.
Right.
And so it's like, holy shit. I say that a lot. It is holy shit, right?
Yeah.
So
those are interesting moments.
Yeah, it's trinitized, right? And so throughout the next few years, I'm introduced to several things about ufology and ETs, and then in 1988, same time I got my name, I had published an article in the newspaper I told you I was delivering, and right underneath my article was a display ad for Stephen and April White, who channeled Ashtar and Athena. And I'm like, it's one of those gut feelings. Got to be there. Don't know why. I'm curious. Have the time notion. I show up. Right. There's about 150 people in the room, small hotel room, one aisle down the center and along the sides. And I sit 3 rows back and off to the side just so I can be out of the way and not, attract attention. Last thing I wanted to do. I was just there being curious. Well, they get up and they introduce themselves, and they're beautiful, gorgeous beings, blue-eyed, blonde hair. Steve's about 6'4", April's probably 6 foot, angelic looking, right? And dressed in white, of course. So Steve gets up and he says, we're going to do this, and we're full body channels, so trance channels. So we're not going to be here while this is going on. And then he goes into his trance and starts out, and eyes closed. he's looking around the room, and 85, 90% of the time he would fall on me and be looking directly at me. And I'm getting uncomfortable at this point. And so I'm asking internally, am I imagining that you're looking at me, or are you really looking at me? His eyes open up and he's staring directly into mine. Talk about spooky.
I'd say that's your confirmation.
Well, yeah. And it was spooky cool, right?
Yeah.
So in that delivery, he was talking about the administration of the Ashtar command and how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. April gets up and does the same thing about community building. So he's talking about the structure, the male energy. She's talking about the emotion and the family. And she's doing the same thing, looking directly at me. I come up with the same question. She opens her eyes, same shit. What do you do with that, right? You can't deny it.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking and I'm questioning, and I keep my mouth shut because it's really weird. And then I don't know if it was maybe a year later, I meet a psychic who's from Scotland, who's come to America. And she's giving me a reading, and she tells me that I'm their son.
Oh.
What? No, can't be, right? So I fight it for another. That would have been 1990. I fight it for another almost 10 years. And I finally give in. And then in so doing, after my divorce, I had developed I call it a stand-up routine. It was a transformation based on wearing a three-piece suit and using the items of clothing as I would take them off as metaphors for life.
Cool.
I had clothes on underneath. Okay, so
I figured that. Yes.
So I was asked to come present that at what was called the Gathering of Souls, which was in Camp Verde in October of 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And I met the two women that were putting it on. They recognized me, and it's still just weird, right? And yet I'm stepping into it because I can. Why not? Explore it. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
And as I'm doing so, then I do my presentation, which is hilarious because I make all kinds of jokes during it, and it's just fun, right?
Yeah.
And insightful along the way. And I have at that point, I had a marbleized tuxedo that I put on with the suit up and show up ending of it. And then at the end of the conference, it was a 3-day conference. There were contactees and experiencers from all over the world, around 250, 300 of them. And so in the closing ceremony, they call me up to the stage and introduce me as the son of Ashtar and Athena to the audience.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I was not expecting that. and yet it, beyond the heebie-jeebies, it felt resonant. And I'm feeling a little uncomfortable in sharing this. Well, why not? It's time. I don't give a shit anymore anyway. So look at what I'm doing and who I am functioning as to whether it's relevant or not. Make your own choice.
Well, I work with your dad a lot, so
He's an interesting character, isn't he?
he is.
Very matter of fact, to the point, and with a sense of humor that just cuts right through all your bullshit, right?
But very compassionate at the same time. It's a lovely blend.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a strange thing to feel, because that's the unconditional love and truth that's contained in it, because the truth can be cutting,
Yeah, for sure.
especially if you're kind of attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most cutting time.
Right. So the resonance of it just felt true. So Ashtarna Theta wanted to give me the leadership role of the ground crew. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready because maybe I'm prepared. Otherwise, it wouldn't be offered. And so they asked me to be baptized as well. So here's my like third or fourth baptism in life, and it's in the pool in October, and it's freaking cold.
Yeah. I would have been like, can you not warm up the water a bit?
Yeah, no, it was, and yet I did it. Right?
Mhm.
If you're going to
Yeah,
commit
of
to
course.
something, fully commit or don't.
Yeah, all in.
And because you don't give it the chance to unfold if you withhold anything. And what's the worst that can happen? Right? And then there's not going to be anything worse than the trials and tribulation that I'd already experienced. You know, I had an ex that had affairs and blamed, told the bishop that I was having affairs to keep the eye off her. And, then they tried to excommunicate me based on a lie. And, just that kind of stuff. And the things you have to put up with from other people, trying to sabotage or crucify you in some way in the eyes of others so that they can feel superior.
Yeah.
Why? Right? Why can't? Yes, confidence is one thing. If it appears arrogant, then maybe it's your ego that needs to be in check, as opposed to projecting your ego at another, saying they're full of themselves. Well, what is self-love? You're full of yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Confidence. Doesn't matter what your role is. If you're confident in it, play it well.
Yeah.
We're all important. Who I am is just as important as the guy that's willing to dig ditches for us and help put cabling or fiber in for us that we can then enjoy these kind of communications with, interruption free, right? And as long as we can see that and not differentiate based on status, then we're making progress. Because the status is the old profit over people and planet agenda instead of the people and planet over profit agenda that we need to have.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when you
That was in 2000. That led to other shenanigans. I announced myself to others who supposedly were aligned with the Ashtar Command in some way that were online, and every one of them ghosted me.
Interesting.
Yes, right. You would think that would be different. What I found is that when you show up living the example of what others are preaching is possible, you become a confrontation to their own belief system because they're not quite fully in it. And will do everything they can to prove you wrong.
Right.
Thank goodness we're advanced from where we were some time ago. Right? We don't get killed for our beliefs in this country anyway.
Yes, thankfully.
Or at least most of us don't, unless there's a fanatic that gets on the loose, right? Like the guy in New Orleans recently. And yet, when you consider that consciousness never dies, it just changes form, that means that all those involved have volunteered to be so when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
What did we learn from it? What did they teach us?
Yeah.
And then how do we proceed from there, right? So from that time of being announced, and I had more questions. I'd already, so in the 90s, early 90s, I was meditating one night, 91, I think it was, fall sometime. And I wake up on a steel gurney on board a ship with electrodes lining my sphincter and 3 tall grays pushed back against the wall. And I'm laughing. I normally sleep nude. I wake up on the table with a t-shirt on for some reason.
Maybe they thought you might be cold.
Yeah, I don't know. They wanted to make me feel somewhat, right, clothed or protected. But anyway, I'm laughing. And I'm like, come on, guys, what do you think you're doing? And I'm starting to pull the electrodes out. And I didn't realize at the time that my laughter was so incongruent with the normal experience there. And the energy from it is what pushed them up against the wall. And so I didn't realize that until years later. So I get to the last one, and it feels like I pulled a pubic hair because there's a slight sting. And I open my eyes up, and I'm back in bed. And I'm like, oh, man, that was a perfect opportunity to have a conversation, and I just blew it.
Oh, my.
So I close my eyes, and I try like hell to go back. I have no clue how. So I'm in the inner space, and I run into this male figure, cloaked, kind of a shimmering between black, white, rainbow colored, cloak, covered head, couldn't see the head. Male voice says, next time, just relax. All we're doing is trying to tune you up so that we can communicate more easily. It made instant sense. I'm like, because the breadcrumbs from the week before included studying the central nervous system, and particularly the perineal nerve, which ends in the sphincter and the genitals, and it's the only one that connects directly to the tip of the spine. So if you were an advanced race with the capability of adjusting personal vibratory rates subtly, which is all it takes, where would you plug in?
Never thought about it as a plug, but okay.
Definitely. Well, we're taught to not talk about, right? That's taboo.
No, I know. Yeah, for sure.
However, that kind of awareness, huge shift, right? Because there's this purported malevolence that we're taking up for testing and stuff like that. No, we're all connected. We already believe we're all connected, right? So what's that mean? How do we live that? And how might others live that with us?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to push our boundaries till we get rid of them. Or at least establish appropriate ones, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So in this awareness, then that led to multiple encounters. They'd show up in my room. I had 2 pairs of one were insectoid, the other were reptilian. Don't know what their normal size was because they appeared as a hologram at the end of my bed around a round table. And they were reporting into me as though I was some kind of leadership figure at the time. I didn't get it then. This was 1991. And yet there was a part of me that did. And I simply replied, they kind of were reporting in on activities. I said, as long as you do not manipulate.
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, we got that. So then later on, I started having, and after I was announced at the event, then in February of the following year, it was on a Tuesday, I think it was the 13th maybe, I started having these dream visions, if you will. When I would go to bed, I would feel my vibratory rate go up, and next thing I know, I would be on board a ship in an auditorium emceeing a symposium. Symposium was about first contact. and how it was progressing and the things that were going on. And as each speaker, and these were like 300 different life forms in the audience. The event was actually, I found a channeling online several weeks later, and it was called the Council of 300,
Mm-hmm.
February of 2001. I didn't know anybody would pick it up, but if it's an event like that, somebody's going to, and they're going to report it so others can, who were there can go, oh shit, it was real, right? So those events, it gave me another perspective. And at the end of it, I was given a plaque that had two small pegs just inside the lower right and left corners and square, slightly raised. Just inside of that were two stylized eyes of Horus that looked like thrones. And on each of the top of the eyes, the cushions, one had the sign of Alpha on it, the other one had the sign of Omega on it. And then up above, that took up the lower third. In the upper 2/3 was a translucent bi-directional rotating spiral medicine wheel. So you could see through it. Both of them it was just, phenomenal. And it was a true gift. And that symbology of what's there, I still haven't deciphered fully. And that was in 2001. Here we are 23 years later, almost 24 years later.
So there may be somebody in our audience that was there with you.
I'm sure there probably is.
So this is Gerald. He says, this entire story is giving me deja vu. Feels like I've listened to Zen Benefiel share all his story.
Maybe you have. But at least that connection is really cool, Gerald.
I think he's probably been to the meeting.
There are others. There was a gentleman named Wayne Moody, who was a civil planner in Tucson, built one of their first environmentally friendly communities. I met him at a hypnotherapy workshop, and he's probably 20 years my senior. And first thing he says to me, I know you. We met on board ship one night. You were just getting ready to go.
Awesome.
I'm like, okay, cool. Right? Because there's all these little tasty tidbits, if you will, of congruence that are nonlinear at best and multidimensional.
Yeah.
So
I think that might be why I was confused about our other association. I think I may have seen you up there as well.
Could be, and probably so, right? There are those relatives, relative experiences. Now, also back in, I'm going to snap back again, non-linearity as we're speaking. So back in 1989, during the summer, I was given the opportunity to experience what's called a multi-plane awareness technique, developed by William Swigard back in the 1950s. And it is a facilitated process that takes the participant through establishing their light body around them, then allowing that light body to move above them, projecting their consciousness into it, their observation ability, and then taking that light body and ascending through 9 planes of consciousness and integrating their body on each of those planes, and then looking out through its eyes and reporting what's there for them to see, right? So it was in 89. In 2018, I'm preparing for an interview with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, which is it's a 28-year dream come true. I wanted to emulate him and Bill Moyers as an interviewee on my original show, 1990, hoping someday to be worthy of an interview with one of them. So that summer, Jeffrey reaches out to me, and through my Ufology Press website, which is no longer up, unfortunately, And he had the only thing that I had there to communicate with me was called SnakePipe. It's a voicemail system that's web-based,
Mhm.
no other contact information. So I get this voicemail and I recognize his voice before he even says who he is. And my heart just starts pitter-pattering, right? It's like, here, is it going to happen? Right? And he says, hey, I just did an interview with Jason Georgiani on the Grays, and I think your audience would be interested in it. Would you take a look at it and see if you could help promote it? Sure.
Yeah.
So I
Cool.
do. I write an article, I feature the interview, and I send that link along with a PDF copy of Stubbing My Toe on Purpose, which is my big book, subtitled A Seminal View of Consciousness, Cosmology, and the Congruence of Science and Spirituality. I sent that to him. No small title, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just bathroom reading. And so I sent that to him as well. And I get an email back 3 days later. Hey, would you like to come talk about it? So that was mid-June. In August, we drove up to Albuquerque and did 3 interviews. One was called A New World Order. The second was called The Sociology of Ufology. And the third was
Ooh.
called On Hearing Voices. And right now, each one of those has about 7,000 views. Um, Now, the interesting thing is as I was prepping to go up there, I started listening to a bunch of his old shows, right? I watched his TV show in the 80s. That's how I knew about him. And in that, I found a guy named Vernon Neppy who was talking about the triadic dimensional distinction vortical paradigm.
That's a mouthful. And a huge concept.
DDVP for short. Now, and in that, what he and Edward Close, it's a quantum physics theory of everything paper, published in 2010. What they posit is consciousness, space, and time are tethered across 9 dimensions for the human experience. Doesn't eliminate others, just like the 9 planes in the multi-level or multi-plane. Doesn't
Right.
eliminate other potentials. It just says this is our bandwidth in the human experience.
Cool.
That's a lot. Imagine if we had access to that. Now, here's the science, though, that proves what I experienced. So it wasn't just imagination. There's actual dimensions that we inhabit,
Yeah.
and the multi-plane simply allows us to connect them all. Now, when I did,
Thus making us multidimensional beings. Right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how I experienced that, I went through the process. I got to what I thought was the end when the facilitator says, okay, I want you to get ready to come back. Now, I'd gone through the 9 planes and was in the beyond part of the process. And I hear his prompt. I'm like, am I ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Okay. Back into my body. I opened my eyes up, turned to look at him, and the first words out of his mouth, uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Right? And then I said, what? What's the matter? You gave me the prompt to get ready to come back. I was ready. I came back. And he said, well, that was just the prompt to get ready to come back. You're supposed to drop your bodies off where you got them. I'm like, well, okay.
Now I'm bringing it all with me.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep it.
I'm like, okay. And I'm flippant, right? Have no idea, because I don't believe what I just, part of me, right? There's that skeptical part that, yeah, I experienced this, but did I? So a couple of weeks later, now, not a couple, that night, I wake up about 2:00 in the morning. My room is abuzz. There's like a party going on. I'm startled awake. And I hear all these voices and sounds and, tones, and I'm like, "Oh," right? And got used to it over the next 2 weeks. And then I had a chance to invite a psychic friend to spend the night with me. And she left her day timer, and it was a long way. We'd had meetings. We were putting together another event. And she got home, Mr. Daytimer, and called me up at 11:30 at night and said, "Hey, can I come back and get it? It's my life." Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe, because she had no awareness of what was happening. And I'm like, maybe I can talk her and spend the night and just see what she picks up, not say anything to her. And so it happened. And about that time in the morning, right, she sits straight up in bed and says, "Oh my God, how could you sleep in here? There's got to be at least a dozen different beings in this room." And then it clicked. Shit, that's me.
Yeah.
And so, again, 1989, it's 2025 now. So you can imagine all of the circuitous spiraling activity that's been happening
Mm,
throughout those years that I cannot articulate yet.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And if I could, you'd probably think I was nuts anyway. Because you too probably wouldn't, because you've been
Yeah.
there and experienced similar things. So you know from which I'm speaking, um, which didn't happen very often up until COVID. The listening just wasn't there. And then COVID happened, and all of a sudden, the sequestration and the obsession on self hygiene allowed people time and space to self examine
Yeah.
and rethink who they are, refeel who they might be or want to become, and then have choices to do
Mhm.
so. And we see that happening in massive events now, subtly, but yet it's ubiquitous. You can see the changes in and the reflections of people globally of how they're interacting with each other, of what's being shared socially online. That it's taken I don't want to say an evil leap forward, but it's taken a leap forward.
Mhm. It seems to be growing exponentially, is what it feels like, in terms of how people are responding, the numbers of how people are responding.
You're familiar with Wilbert Smith? Does that name ring a bell?
It does. I'm not sure why, but it does.
Well, I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because he was the scientist that was the head of Project Magnet in Canada, which was the same as Project Blue Book in America.
Ah,
He
okay.
had
That's why.
contact experiences. He was one of those scientists that was open, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had some memoirs. Now, this was in 1950s. He was in charge. He died in 1962. His memoirs were published in 1964. Among them was a lot of information that was shared with him by what he called people from elsewhere. And in that, one of the things they shared was time to them is a measurement in the change of entropy. So if we're moving from chaos to order, time is going to truncate or seem to, because there's less distractions to getting things done in order that they were designed to be. Does that take away free will and choice? No, it doesn't.
No.
It means you make better free will choices. So in that, it gives us the opportunity to think about things differently, such as the second law of thermodynamics being wrong. Right?
Yeah.
Howard Bloom agrees with me on this. Matter of fact, I think that I heard it from him first, and I agreed with him because it felt true. Systems don't decay. Man-made systems do. Natural
Mm-hmm.
systems don't. They refine in order. What has our bodies done over our evolutionary period? Look how far we've refined them to the point of now we're gaining the consciousness to actually bilocate, teleport,
Yeah.
communicate telepathically, right? Understand these multidimensional aspects of us and interact with beings in them.
Mm-hmm.
right? Not too long ago, we'd be, and I was, institutionalized over it.
Yeah.
Right?
We've come a
So
long way.
maybe.
We have a long way to go yet.
Oh,
But
Do we, right? We don't know. That's the whole thing about being in the present. It is such a powerful place where we've harvested the past, right? We don't drag it with us.
mm-hmm.
We harvest it to nourish the future. So we look at what we've done. We have better prep work in the present for what we can do in the future. And so we plan and strategize differently to be inclusive of that from now forward, instead of dragging the history with us and thinking, oh, yeah, well, history repeats itself. Where the hell do we get that?
It doesn't have to.
No.
If we're aware.
No, it only repeats itself because you want it to. You haven't learned to act differently, to behave differently, to love instead of hate.
Yeah.
Right? There's too much. This is the trauma. Hating ourselves, let alone others.
Yeah.
Right? And we're taught that we're less than. Why? Because they don't know any better. Right? Those that teach that are unaware, how can they teach awareness? Right? We think that all of this has been hidden from us, that there's some massive conspiracy to keep us dumb. No. There just hasn't been the consciousness to allow us to be smart.
but we have to be open to the idea that there's something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And that opportunity has been there for millennia, starting with the Vedas that we know of. Right? But you got to seek it first. You have to want to find it. And what you seek, you will find because it's seeking you too.
Exactly.
Pretty bizarre and just absolutely amazing when you're the experience of it. It brings such a state of awe in the moment that, it's just like you feel the connection. Because it's everything and yet nothing. Right?
It's a beautiful unfolding.
Yeah.
It really is.
Wonderful.
And then you're able to, do the form, fit, and function stuff by perfect design. And so you take your skill set that you've developed over your lifetime. You don't shit can it because you suddenly want to change your life. No, that's part of what you are, what you've learned in order to prepare for what you can become.
Yeah. Each and everything that we learn, we bring into new areas of our lives, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Embrace it, feel it, love it, right? It's there for you. So why would you want to resist or deny it? And it's not the growth. I hear a lot of people, growth is so painful. No, it isn't. It's the resistance that's painful. Growth
Yes, exactly. Jen and I talk about that a lot. Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Well, it's been a true pleasure having you today, Zen.
Oh, we're done yet?
Yeah, we've actually gone over.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Wonderful.
It was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your experiences.
It's out there now.
Well, we'd love to have you back whenever you are up for that. And it's been.
I love it. This happened very interestingly. We were looking months into the future, and then all of a sudden it came back to today.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
It's awesome.
It was meant to be.
Wait a minute. No, you're not going to wait. It's going to happen.
Now.
That was them telling me, well, you should ask him about Monday. It was guided.
When you pay it, and here's the thing, Tanya, when you pay attention and then act on that subtle impression, no matter what it might be, it may sound goofy as all get out. I guarantee you, when you pay attention to it and you have the intention to fulfill who you are, and your interactions are consistent with that, magic happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think all three of us have witnessed that at numerous times in our lives.
And we're just inviting others to enjoy the bliss
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you
and the
so
work.
much. It is work. It's a
It is.
labor of love.
If we could merge words, maybe it needs to be plurk.
Plurk.
Play and
Play
work.
work.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our home play.
Oh,
Jen.
yeah. So we didn't pick a new deck, guys. So what I'll do is
Just
I
pick one
will
from the old
Have
one and
more
new
time
one.
to play. That's super.
pull from our deck that we were using before, Seeds from the Sacred Feminine. And let's see what we got. What do they have for us?
We ask for some guidance for people to.
Oh, I love
to
it.
work on.
Laugh a big belly laugh.
Perfect. Perfect.
Right? We're talking about play. We're talking about how it's got to be.
Oh
Here
my God.
we go. Laugh
So
that
what
big
does that
belly laugh.
That's the Buddha belly.
I'm telling
Suffering
you.
is optional.
It is. All right, here we go, guys. I'm going to read this one on out to you.
Okay.
All right. Laugh a big belly laugh. You have lost your sense of humor, grandchild. It might be time to lighten up. A smile feels good. A chuckle that rumbles in your throat feels even better. But a laugh that makes your belly muscles hurt is good medicine. Laughter is the Creator's language that passes through all the sacred realms, including the earth realm. It is the Creator's way of communicating with the Earth Mother and all of her children. Laughter helps those in the physical realm to know and to feel love. Laughter and love go hand in hand. When you experience joy and merriment, love flows into your heart and you are one with the Creator. This is sacred law. You are meant to be joyful and carefree, grandchild. Let yourself laugh loudly, wholly, and completely. Laughter is a deep release, so laugh. Your noisy laughter is a sacred sound to the ears of all creation.
Beautiful.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Final thoughts then? Anything you'd like to pass on in a final thought? Yours?
Wow. So many. I'm attempting to let it distill into one.
Mm-hmm.
In your precious moments, in times of turmoil, simply pause, take a breath, thinking I, exhale with M, and think no more for a moment, and just allow yourself to be.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been a true honor.
Namaste and in la catch.
Namaste. And for everyone else, don't forget to come back next week. We'll see you then. Please like and subscribe. And we shall see you soon. Bye now.